Thanks for joining The Selfish Show. On today's episode, we're going to have Darci Leonard talk about identity conversations that we had when she was one of my students years ago and I was one of her professors. We just walked through mentoring and what that looked like and how all of those conversations from years ago just impact her conversations as a therapist with her clients today. Hope you enjoy the episode. All right, you guys, this is another episode of The Selfish Show. And the reason why I call it The Selfish Show is because I'm asking questions selfishly of friends, former students. You know, this is new for me. I haven't really done too many episodes. And today we have Darci Leonard. Darci, thank you for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And yeah, Darci was a student of mine years ago. We've just kind of known each other for years. We've just maintained relationship, although we haven't talked to you in a little bit. You know, I wrote a recommendation for your master's program and you just graduated, and lots of life has happened for me too, so we'll catch up later. But yeah, so this is, I'm just gonna ask you a bunch of questions just about you and how you see the self, and maybe if like the impact that I've had in your life, if I've had any, you know. And like I typically pick people that like I've had relationships with and we've had conversations with about life and growing up and all the things. But I'm really excited to talk to you because you're a therapist now.
Yes, I am. So my degree last week was graduation.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes.
My degree is in counseling psychology, and I'm going specifically for my marriage and family therapist license. So I'm a trainee right now. But yeah, I've been doing therapy for about a year now out of CBU's counseling center. So I've been working with students.
And that counts as your hours?
Yes, that's my clinical hours. So I have about 400 right now, which is exciting.
How many do you need?
8,000 before I can get licensed.
Then it just sounds so far away. It just sounds like. And so how it works, right, is you're a therapist. For all intents and purposes, you're a therapist, but you work with a licensed therapist and you just like, you know, report to them. This is what they said. This is what I said, that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. So when you're a trainee, which is like when you're in your master's program, they have to countersign all of your notes and sign off on all your diagnoses, anything like that. And so I'm under her license. So they're not even my clients. They're actually my supervisor's license.
Okay.
And then now that I'm in the graduated phase, I become registered and I'm still working under someone else's license. But because you've been doing it for a little while longer, you don't need as much oversight. So I have less supervision hours, but I'm still under her license until I get my own.
Okay. And how long will it take you to get 3,000 hours?
You have 6 years. I'm hoping to do it in like 3.
Good.
So that's the goal.
And then after 3 years, you do all your hours, then you get your license, and then you can go into private practice?
Yeah. So I go into private practice, and then after 2 years, I can actually become a supervisor. So I can hire people to work on my license. So it's a really like reciprocal field. It's really interesting, honestly.
Okay, so this wasn't the plan when you were in college.
No, it wasn't at all. My bachelor's is in leadership and justice with an emphasis in political science. So yeah, that's how, having all those leadership classes with you as my professor, I was very interested in like influencing the public sphere. And I really loved the leadership piece, the management piece, very much of like, how do we influence our employees? How can we treat them like real people? What does that look like? And then as I got more and more kind of into the field, I did an internship my freshman year with a state senator. And I was like, oh, this is not where it's at. I don't want to do this.
But you stuck with it.
Yeah, I did. So I loved the government piece. I think that understanding like organizations and stuff is still important and relevant. And so that was definitely still influential, taught me critical thinking skills. And I was like, oh, I'm going to influence society from a different realm. I'll go the church nonprofit realm because that's another sphere of influence. And then as I got into that, I was kind of like, okay, this is interesting, really, really difficult to like cause change in the nonprofit world.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many factors in terms
Sure.
of like, you know, the stakes are a lot higher. There's not a lot of room for innovation, that kind of stuff. And so kind of just hit a point where I was like, what's my favorite part of work? And I was like, it's the people. Like, it's engaging with people. It's supporting people. When I moved out of San Diego back home to family, I ended up in a for-profit as a billing manager, and I was working with like data analytics and supporting my operations team. And I was just like, okay, I'm in my later 20s. What do I want to do? And it just really felt like it was this conviction of my favorite thing is people. And if I can do that on an individual level, empowering people, helping them find similar tools that I've found myself in therapy, like that will be the most fulfilling thing in the world. And now getting into the field, I do see opportunity to influence kind of the way in which we teach our trainees and the way that we organize our agencies and our private practices and how we enable both the people who are like actually doing the job, right? Trainee to associate to therapist.
Yeah.
And then also the model of care that we utilize. So as crazy as it sounds, there's still a big overlap that I'm finding.
Okay.
But yeah, that's how I ended up there.
Gosh. When did you start at San Diego Christian?
I started in the fall of 2014.
2014. And you graduated when? 2018.
I'm ready.
You had me as a professor on the tail end of my being a full-time professor.
Yeah.
Now I've taught classes afterward, but like as a full-time professor, you're on the tail end of that. So you got like the nicer version of Lem, I think. But then I was also going through a divorce in 2012, and then I was separated for a little bit, went through a divorce, but like I did that quietly, like I didn't talk about it. I think eventually I shared in the chapel, but like it was like 2 years later, like I had to work through a ton of things, you know. I was teaching ministry, I was teaching Bible, but like I wasn't working at a church. I was working at a church, but I stopped doing that because, you know. But then as a professor, you know, like the stuff that I was teaching still worked. And so I continued teaching, but I was hurting. It was such a tough season for me. I was seeing a therapist and I wasn't really talking to folks, just like surviving. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then in comes Darci Leonard as a freshman, like with all the energy, you know, and she shows up to one of the leadership classes that I was teaching. It was a brand new major at the time.
Yeah.
Leadership and justice, kind of if you want to be a cop or if you couldn't fit any other programs at San Diego Christian, this is the one that you jumped into. You know, like there were a bunch of athletes in that program.
There were.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so they built it as like, you could be a cop or you could like go into, you know, civic service or do all kinds of things. But it was just kind of like, if you couldn't find any, which always surprised me because I was like, all right, Darci's pretty smart. Like, why'd you pick this one? But so like, that's the season that I was in. And then here's Darci with all the energy. And you had asked me, mentor me, you know, like be in my life for whatever reason. You were connecting with the things that I was teaching in the classroom about leadership. And you had like a hunger and thirst for leadership. And so like, that was the season I was going through. And you're like, I need you to mentor me and help me to work through this stuff. And because you really wanted to learn this stuff. And I was like, you need to find somebody else to mentor you, but we can continue talking about the leadership stuff. I can do the coaching, but I'm not going to do the mentoring stuff. Like, I don't know why, you know, maybe it's the Christian culture, but I realized that like in that season, you were seeking out like mentoring or some kind of coaching, but it just wasn't available.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like I had a weird thing about it, but then like once I realized why do I have a weird thing about it? Like I'm having really good conversations with these people, helping them process through their hurts, their trauma, their whatever. And no one's having these conversations. Like, why did we even have these conversations from your perspective?
Yeah. Well, I know
I'm asking you to go back.
No. I remember like so vividly because I was in the DHML program right as it was like dying. Like my senior year, we didn't even meet towards the end.
Sad.
It was I think it was, like my freshman, sophomore year, we had to get a mentor. And they were just like, like it's part of the program, you got to find a mentor. And I remember I was in your class and I remember going up to the, one of my professors, and she was who was in charge of our like cohort. And I remember being like, I'm so pissed about this class. I was like, Lem came in and he told all these freshmen that it was so funny. I remember it so vividly because I was like, he came in and he was like, I don't want to teach this class. And he came in the first day and you were like, whatever you want your grade to be in this class, that's fine. Just write me a paper saying, this is what my grade is going to be. This is what I'm going to do to earn this grade. And if you want your paper to say that you don't want to do anything and you want an A, then don't do anything and you can have an A. And I was so type A. I was so like, by the book, this is who I'm going to be in this world. I was like, well, I can't just say I'm going to show up and get an A. That's crazy. And I remember being so mad at, she was like, well, you have to find a mentor. Like, why not pick his brain? And okay, like maybe I will. And then as you started to talk, what I think resonated with me so much was as I was learning more about leadership, as I was learning about what it means to truly lead, it's a lonely and hard thing. Mm-hmm. And I think as a society and as a culture and very much in the church I grew up in, it was like leadership, like you want that, you want to strive for that. And what you brought was like authenticity. And I was like, this is a person who has lived life in that role and understands it fundamentally, like as a human. And so I think that was the appeal for me, was it was so different than what I'd experienced. And even though I was pissed, I respected you in a way that I was surprised at. I was like, this man knows what he's talking about. And so I think for me, it was, this isn't just like, it was definitely a throwaway major for a lot of people, but it wasn't for me. And I think that's what I was like, if I'm going to do this, it's not going to be necessarily just the classrooms. It has to be experiential and it needs to be with someone who really knows what they're talking about. And so I think that's what it came for me. And then you ended up speaking some profound truth into my life.
Okay, that's what I want to hear. Let's see, I'd love to hear about that because it did connect, because you were somebody that you really wanted to learn. And I was like, okay, I'll invest in this person because they really want to learn. You know, you have 30 people in the class and most of them are just doing the class, but you would come and you would ask questions. Like every class you were asking a question and we were having conversations outside of class. And so we would have conversations and we'd have some really hard conversations. Yeah. And again, like, I don't know if you knew how much I was struggling and how much my life was falling apart, because I was asking some really, really deep questions of myself. Like, you know, all of the things that I had all the answers, you know, I had all the Bible, Jesus-y answers, but like none of it was working at the time. Yeah. Because I'd never experienced anything, you know, like this. But still, I still had Darci in my life, like asking me all these questions. But like, what are the, like, I'd love to hear that. So that's part of the reason why it's selfish, is because I'm asking, like, I don't know, and I'm not afraid to ask, you know, like, but like, what does that mean? Like profound things I can guess, but like, I'm just going to ask. Yeah, totally. I think that it's so funny because identity is such your like thing. Yeah. When I go back in time and talk about that time in my life, I had a full blown identity crisis. Like, which I think a lot of people have. I work with college students now, so I see it for what it is, you know, like it's such an interesting time of transition and you're pushing away from your parents. You're trying to figure out who you're going to be in this world. It's a really interesting, and I mean, even from like a psychological perspective, this extended adolescence that we are experiencing with these kids that are going to college, they're 18, 19, 20, 22. They're still figuring out their life. They aren't living on their own. It's a really weird time. And for me, I spent so much of my life up to that point being told who I was by the authority figures in my life, from my parents, you know, like my family situation. My parents are amazing. I love them so much, but we definitely had some complicated things when it came to growing up and being the youngest. It's just life things. Yeah, life things. Life. For sure. I actually was so I'm sandwiched in my family of origin. I'm sandwiched between two adopted kids.
So we adopted my little brother, which took away my spot as the youngest. And then we adopted my older sister, who was right in between me. And there were a lot of issues and things that came with that. And so my go-to at like 9, 10, 11 was, I'm just going to follow the rules. And then you get to college and you're like, wait, what are the rules?
Right.
So I think the biggest thing that was really helpful for me that you would always do is you would push back on why. Like, okay, I'm going to go do this thing. And you'd be like, but why?
Yeah.
Like, why are you doing that? What's your reasoning?
Yeah.
There's 2 pieces of advice that I literally repeat to my clients to this day. One thing that you said to me was, it was after class one day, right around the time that you were like, we can start to have more conversations. You said, Darci, you are a high-performing person. You take care of everyone else. You have these really insane standards for yourself, and you have really insane standards for everybody else. And you just let that sit. And I was like, but I'm selfless and I'm caring and I'm all these things. I take care of everybody. But like, you are right. I am running myself into the ground with these insane expectations.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying, it's okay to be a little bit selfish. So I said, but what if I become like so selfish? And you said, it's okay if the pendulum swings far the other way. Even if you become super self-absorbed and really self-oriented and all those things, you're going to find your way back. And like, just the idea that there's flexibility and that like, you understood who I was in my core of my person, that like, even if I got a little bit self-centered and did things that, you know, selfish, it's so funny because like, I think nowadays they're just like, that's just basic self-care. But like, I was like, I can't.
But yeah, you couldn't. You would like, I can't do this. You know what I mean? And I'd be like, yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, I think, was just reframing, because you had like, this is the way that it is. And it was just reframing things for you, like, you know, to kind of see, like help you see yourself.
Yes. Yes. I think that was so, I was looking through, I keep every note that any person ever writes me forever. I have this giant box and I need to get a bigger one because it's getting too big. But I have a paper in there that you had us do in that class, in that leadership class. You had everyone go around and like, we had to find 7 people and say like, use 5 words to describe.
Yeah.
And that was the first time in my life that I think I realized like, I'm harsher to myself than other people are.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. I feel like there were so many times you really genuinely taught me like, what does it mean? I think it was the first time I had someone in my life who didn't care about my performance or my productivity, but like actually saw
like cared
me
about you. Yeah.
Yes, like me as a real person. Like that was life-changing for me. It was like all this other stuff, I don't give a crap about. You could be an F student, you could flunk out of college tomorrow. How's your soul? Like, who are you as a real person? And like, are you a good person? And are you showing up as a good person in your life?
Well, and that exercise allows you then to receive, the exercise was to receive 5 words. You wrote words about yourself, but to receive 5 words from other people, and then to just sit in that like, whoa, people see this in me?
Yes.
You know, typically like the thing that you are most tough on yourself about, like other people see the opposite because you're working so hard to like not be that.
Yes. Yes.
And so people are like, oh, you're so selfless, you're so kind, you're so like giving. And, you know, and you're like, hey, these are just all the, you know, opposite. But that's how we're made, you know?
Yeah.
Like these are our biggest fears. And so we work really hard to cover it. Of course, like, listen to me, I'm telling like the therapist this now. You know what I mean? Because I have no background in therapy. I have no background in any of that. These are just all the things that I've done throughout the years with identity and like, you know, I've done my study, you know, so I've done my research, but again, I'm not like a therapist. We did hit, okay, this is the question that I want to ask.
Okay.
There was a moment in our relationship where you were saying like, you know, moment I'm about to talk about.
Maybe. I think I have an idea.
You would come to me and like, what do I do? And I was like, this is what you didn't do. And then like, you wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
You know, and then we would have these conversations of like, well, this is what you need to do. And I wouldn't do it. And then I remember because when I was saying it, like, and I wasn't frustrated when I said it. And I said, if you're not going to do any of the stuff that you're asking for, you're asking me what to do. If you're not going to do any of these things, then why meet? Let's not meet anymore. Like, I don't need, and I wasn't frustrated and I wasn't mad. I just wanted to like And I don't even know that I was trying to like, I don't know any techniques. I just was like, all right, if you're not going to listen to me,
Yeah.
like, let's not meet any longer. And, but like, I, and, but you took it to heart. Like, I think, I don't know if you were hurt or you were scared or whatever it was, but you still wanted to be, you still wanted that mentoring. And so you did turn it around and you did like, and to be fair, it was a tough thing. I won't bring up what it was that you were asking, but it was a very big decision and it was a very tough thing. Like looking back on it now, I'm like, gosh, that helped turn things around for you and heal a lot of parts of you. But like that, it was a, to be fair, it was a tough decision for you, and I totally get that. Like, but like, what was that? Do you remember that conversation? What would tell me like on your end? Because that was the hardest I pushed, and
Yeah.
I never pushed, but like that was one specific moment. Well,
Yeah.
I want you to answer it in two ways. I want you to answer it as Darci 8 years ago or 10 years ago when we had that conversation, and
Yeah.
then I want you to like give me your take on it as a therapist now that you have all this knowledge. So give me the college student version first.
Yeah. I remember sitting across from you and just being like, this is a big enough deal. I think was the thing that really like resonated with me the most. Is it was always kind of like, I mean, to this day, it's something I'm still actively working on. Like, I minimize. So if something feels like a big deal to me, I'm kind of like, it's probably not that big of a deal. It's going to be fine. It's in your head, whatever, you know?
Right.
Trauma. I think that the moment for me was like, if he's going to take this so seriously, that he would say, hey, like, this is a big enough deal to me that if you don't navigate that, if you don't handle this, like, it's not worth it to me. I don't see actual change happening. And so I think for me, it was a challenge. Like, I didn't receive it as angry. I think for me, it was that check in my spirit of like, this actually matters. It's not in your head. Someone else.
And when you do it, you're all like happy, bubbly. No, I don't want to do it. And then I got serious and I was like, then we don't need to meet anymore, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like I'm remembering, I think it was twofold. And like, I can say it now because I'm very open about my story.
Okay, okay. I remember the
No,
moment.
it was like I had two things happening. Was I had this like really crazy health problem I was not navigating. I didn't want to go to the doctor for it. And I was just like kind of like suffering through. And then also I think it was right around the same time that you were like, you need to start therapy. Like you need to start therapy. And I think
Well,
both of them.
I didn't quite say it that way. I didn't
You're
quite
right.
say it that way.
You're
I,
right.
I
You're
would have never said it that
right.
way.
No, you wouldn't have.
I always framed it with you specifically. It
Yeah.
was about healing your brain.
Yeah.
So it was about healing your brain, and then I didn't even say healing your trauma. Like
Yeah.
I made it something like physical, as opposed because you had a hard time with like
Yeah.
facing my trauma or healing any of my wounds. Like that wasn't like you can't say that to you. And so like for me to specifically say it's just healing your brain. Do it for, jump into it like it'll be good for this physical
Yeah.
part of you. And I mean, I knew what I was saying. Like
Yeah.
I knew it was the way to say it to you without because like if I would have said go to therapy or like, deal with your drama,
Yeah.
like the walls would have gone up, you know what I mean? But to make it like just the total science, like heal the brain. And I
Yeah.
remember that was like the message for a good year, I think. Like we just
Yeah.
kept talking about that. But then you did anyway, you need to answer the second part.
Yes.
So now as the therapist,
Think that what I see often is people hit their breaking point if they don't have someone like, yeah, I get clients that are referred in, right? Like my mom told me to go. My roommate came. The school was like, hey, like, this is a problem. You need to go. And you see that a lot. But I think from that stance, oftentimes when you've experienced trauma or when you're in this state of flux, right? Like they're all in an identity crisis. They're all figuring out who do they want to be. You have to, I think it is often that external push that gets you to actually take it seriously. And I
okay,
think that we need that. I think people need, I can't tell you how many times it's me sitting across from someone being like, this is a problem. This is a big deal because we minimize.
so it's possible to get to it on your own, but it just helps when someone can
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so. I think that having that external validation, because therapy is hard. Part of my informed consent is it gets worse before it gets better often.
Yeah.
Right? I say, like, we talk about hard stuff. Like, that's a risk that we consider. We have to tell people when they start treatment, like, this is a risk that you're incurring, that this is hard and that sometimes it gets worse. And I think that having someone outside who's invested in your growth and takes it seriously is huge,
Mm.
because it is the thing that pushes you to weather the hardness of
Yeah.
therapy. Soul
Yeah.
work is, and I steal this from you too, the dark night of the soul, but you talked about it, like, soul work is
Yeah.
the hardest work you're going to
It's
do.
hard. Yeah.
It's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard, but worth it.
Yeah. And and only people that have done that kind of work can see it and help people walk through it. I think a lot of times, like you and I, like in our walking through life. So here's another part of me, like like I can still, like, I can disconnect. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So I can be invested and I'm like with you
Yeah.
in the conversation, but I never took any of your stuff home, which really helps. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But you worked really, really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, like there was some tough conversations after college, and you were reaching out, and I was like really thankful. I was never scared, because I remember saying the fact that you're reaching out and calling me and texting me and or whatever. And don't get me wrong, I know, like, well, I don't know exactly how, I'll never know, but like you included me in the hard times. You know what I mean? You didn't just let, so I want you to know you didn't let go either. You know what I mean? And you kept me in the loop, and we didn't necessarily talk like every week or even every month, but like when it got hard, you like reached out and said, hey, this is what I'm going through, and we would talk through it. And like you've oh my gosh, you've come a long way.
Yeah.
Like, not don't get me wrong, like I don't mean that in a bad way, but you've worked really, really hard. And so I'm just excited for you and your journey, and how you're gonna, like, you've taken some of the hard work that you've done, like with yourself, and now you get to do it with other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and so, like, tell me about, like, why counseling for graduate school, and like what was the journey like,
Yeah.
or the realization that, like, okay, no, I can do this for other people.
Yeah. I think so. I did a lot of, it was hard. Like, I
Mhm.
struggled. There were points where I struggled with suicidality, like after you'd left
Mhm.
school. And
Mhm.
in 2019, I overdosed on antidepressants. And I think viewing it now, I view it through a framework of, like, God had been the foundation of who I was, and I was so over him. And that pushed me to places, to dark places, and to places where I didn't know who I was. And so I did outpatient programs. 2019,
Mhm.
I spent a total of a month in and out of the hospital, just really struggling. I struggled with self-harm. Like, there was a lot there in the time, probably from like when we started seeing each other to like when I finally moved home. So December of 2019, I moved
Mhm.
back home from San Diego back to Ukaipa, where I am now,
Mhm.
which is such a trip, because 5 years later, same month, I'm graduating with my master. I never would have, right? But I think what ended up happening was in 2020, I lost my grandpa, and I was working at a job. It paid really well. I was like, this is nice. This is more money than I thought I was going to make, because I was, dead set and determined to work in the nonprofit world.
Mhm.
And I had this moment of, the biggest thing that my papa did was he just made everyone know how much he loved them. Like, he was
Mhm.
not afraid. He was the one who'd, like, you'd walk into the room and he'd put his hand on your shoulder and just be like, I'm glad to see you today. Like, I love you. Like, he was
Yeah.
very, and someone who from his generation, he was 80 when he passed. So growing up the way he grew up, not having a lot of affection, not really, that wasn't part of it. There was just something within me that was like, I want to feel like my impact that I've made in the world has that kind of meaningful touch. Like, it was my first real, like, experience with grief, even, of losing someone, and just realizing, like, when we love people, we sign up for risk. Like, we
Mhm.
sign up for the fact that we live in a fallen world and death and decay and disease, like that happens. And when you love someone, you're saying, this risk is happening. Like they're going to pass, this relationship might end, but I'm in it and I'm in to love hard. And it was kind of like, if you're already gonna, like, I want the love that I have to offer people to be so meaningful. And I want to use what I've experienced, because part of my struggle also was the care I was getting, you know, like it took me, I had some really not great therapists. I had, there were medications that I was on that I might not have needed to be on now looking back. Like it was such a like convoluted journey to get what I actually needed, because, you know, they look at you and they're saying like, you're a risk. So let's just do everything we can.
Yeah.
In some ways, you know, because of self-harm, because I was, you know, had enough risk factors, you know, present. And so over the years of healing, being around family, being in community, really figuring out like, what is my mark going to be on the world? It came back to like, I've always loved people, love to talk. I'm a verbal processor.
Yes.
I am obsessed with learning. Like
you are.
Someone say to me like a year ago or something, we were talking and I was like, oh yeah, this book and this podcast and this. And they were like, how many podcasts do you think you listen to in a week?
Yeah.
And I was like, I do probably like 1 or 2 a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I finally realized like the biggest part of honoring that story, and there was so much shame in my story too, just with how deeply I'd struggled and you know, that how I got to that hard place. There was so much shame. And I realized like the way you break down the shame, the way you honor God's ability to work out hard things is by telling your story. And I think that that's where it came to that place of like, I'm qualified for this. Yes, because I read the books. Yes, because I passed the competency exams. Yes, because of all that. But more than anything, like my story and my pain and I've been there, me too, right? Like Brene Brown talks about that vulnerability moment, like that qualifies me. And so I think it was just like, what better way to redeem all of the parts of my story that didn't make sense to this than to really live it with people and to be like, let me be your guide, because this is hard and I've lived the hard and I'm here to say there's another side of this.
Yeah. No, that is so awesome. Does it help you? What does it help you that now you have some of the knowledge and the theory? And so this is what I was dealing with. You know, does that help?
It definitely does. You know, what's so crazy is because it's counseling psychology is broad, but each school kind of has like a specialty. Our school really focuses in on the family and the like marriage, like couples. But when you're providing counseling, oftentimes, especially in the state of California, if you're an MFT, you're working with individuals because that's our primary license type out here. Okay. So some of what I learned actually in my outpatient programs, because I lived it, I integrated the theories I offer. I integrate that into what I'm doing. But what has been wild to me has been what I've learned on trauma. That has been profound, I think, and helped me make sense. Like of yours. Of my experience. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that has been like the biggest thing. I never used to say like, oh, I experienced trauma. I was like, oh yeah, like childhood was interesting. And like, then I like went through an identity crisis and now I'm here. And now being like, all of it makes sense given the context, I think.
Well, and you always need to know why, what's the detail, like what's happening, you know? So man, I'm really excited for you.
Thanks.
I also wanted to tell you that like, in light of what I was going through in my own life personally, you helped me. Not specifically with like what I was dealing with.
Totally.
But help me in that, like, no, I still have something to offer. You know what I mean? I still have like some things that I can help people with. And so like, it was like, cause I was like feeling like I got nothing. Yeah. And then to have somebody like ask for mentoring or coaching or just help me to process through this stuff. I don't know that I've ever told you this, but it really helped me. It really gave me like not something to live for. Like that's a little bit dramatic, but it helped me. No, it gave me purpose, you know, and it gave me like, okay, I can still do this, even though like I'm struggling with some stuff. Let me ask you, like, back to the identity stuff, like, like how much of your work is around identity and helping people process through their identity? Like, I don't know that I've ever thought through this, but like, yeah, how would you answer that question?
Say it's like primary, like it's the
Right,
biggest thing
right.
that
How you
you're
see
helping.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How you see yourself, the way that I explain it, I use this analogy because I've kind of latched on to, there's a model of therapy. It's called emotion focused therapy. And the way that she conceptualizes and explains emotions is beautiful. And then also she puts a big emphasis on attachment style. Because I
Okay.
don't know if
Yeah.
you know this, but across, I'm sure you do know this actually. So like across a thing that they found in a lot of studies is you form your attachment style, right, in those first 5 years. And then whatever your attachment style is, then if you look at a romantic relationship later on, years later, you typically have the same attachment style.
Well,
Crazy, right? So much changes, so much is in flux. That doesn't super change. Interesting. And so she really takes that perspective of like, how does your attachment play out in your relationships and what does that influence? And so one of the analogies I give my clients when they first come in, I say, I kind of take the lens of like, sometimes experiences that we have in childhood, we have a lot of fake plants in our office. So I use a fake plant, but I say, if a 5-year-old were in here right now and I said, this fake plant, this is the name of this plant, this is real, this is what this looks like, it'll always be like this. And they left and they never had a safe adult that they could say, hey, that random lady said that this was a fake plant and I'm experiencing a real plant. It feels different. It actually smells like,
yeah. Yeah.
able to do that, but they don't have anyone safe to check it against. They might live their whole life believing that this cheap imitation is the real thing.
Yeah.
And so much of the work that you do when you look at it through a lens of like, how did these earlier experiences influence? And I look a lot at attachment, but generally that's kind of like a psychodynamic approach. Like a lot of what happens is earlier influences and we're just living on autopilot. So I think so much of like everything leans into that identity form. Who are you going to be? Who are you going to show
Yeah.
up in the world? What do you believe you have to offer? What's your core value? What's your
Yeah.
core belief?
What
Like
story are you telling yourself? How
yeah.
do you see other people? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the bulk of what I do, and part of it is, the demographic I work with, but I think in general, most of what brings people to therapy is whatever they were using before is not working.
Not working. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's huge.
Do you, man, so primarily your work with like young adults or college students is in that counseling setting?
Yeah. Yeah. So we provide, just because I've done all my hours and then I actually am starting there as an associate as well, but I've done all my hours through CBU's counseling center. So we serve about 12,000 students online and in person. Yeah,
Wow.
it's crazy.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. And not everyone uses the services, but that's who
Sure.
we're like offering to. So it's some doctoral, some like professional studies, and then a lot of like that bachelor's age group. So it kind of varies too because they have such a robust online program. You'll get some clients that are older, lived a lot of life, decided they want to go back and get a degree. But yeah, I'd say the bulk of my clients are probably like 18, 19, 20, right around there.
You, first of all, how awesome for you to explain all of that. And like, it just is so like, man, she's great. Are you, do you want to go back for more schooling or just is private practice like what you want to do? Like, only reason why I ask is because like I can see you doing it.
Supervisor's like, you need to do it. She's getting her doctorate in like, I can't remember the official title, but it's basically like teaching therapists. So it's like something about, she's like, you could do this program. I don't, right now, I couldn't imagine writing another paper. Like I couldn't.
Yeah.
But I do want, because the cool thing about the field too is even if you don't go for that higher, like degree, there's so much continuing education. So like I'm getting EMDR trained this summer.
Okay. Awesome.
And I have a couple other like modalities that I'm interested in that I want to get trained in. And I really want, like, my ultimate goal, my dream that we'll see if it happens is I want to provide a holistic model of care. Through private practice. I don't know that I'll necessarily take insurance just because that adds layers.
No, complexity. Yeah, for sure.
But they're based out of Tennessee, but there's this clinic and basically they offer basically their whole concept is people go and they get the help they need in outpatient, inpatient, whatever. And then they go back and their life is completely normal. Like you didn't leave, because you're getting pulled out of your real life. And they do like yoga, nutrition services. They have they do some like holistic stuff when it comes to like medication management, stuff like that. And then they offer group therapy and individual therapy. And their whole concept is like, let's actually like overhaul your life so that your growth is sustainable.
Yeah.
And I think that there's this whole untapped world, which is outside of my like scope of practice. So I definitely have to hunt down some folks to partner with me. But like food is medicine, and getting outside and breaking down our addiction to technology and stuff like that. Like there's so many times I'm sitting across my client and I'm like, well, did you go outside? Did you get some sunshine on your face? Did you take a walk? I think that being able to provide, and I really love the idea of group therapy. I think you find so much healing in that connectedness. So my goal would be to create like a clinic or something that I could have where we integrate. I want to have like a garden and we like do stuff with that. Like I just have this vision of like bringing in people and kind of being a hub where we can bring together all these different holistic services to really not just the psychotherapy. I'm going to change the way I think. I'm going to change the way I talk to myself. I'm going to do that. But like, let me change my life and make it sustainable, and let me build community, because that is what we need. And that's what I found in my journey. Coming home was like, these are my people. And like, now I have this connectedness that I didn't have before.
Yeah.
And so I really want to like create that for people.
Yeah. No, that excitement, there was a little glimpse of like, oh, she's still there. Like the excited. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, we could probably keep talking, but let's end it here and let's have another conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like we'll follow up on some of this stuff. But I want to thank you for just joining and sharing some stuff and just letting me have a question. Like, let me ask you questions, not as a professor, but it's just, like I think I'm kind of on a journey right now. I'm just trying to figure some stuff out. Part of wanting to do this is I've had a couple of friends like challenge me about writing a book on identity and just writing my research, but I hit the point where I was like, I have all this theoretical stuff, but I only want to write about the stuff that actually shown through. Like you've shared a couple of things that I'm like, oh, okay. Those are key things that Darci picked up on that I definitely want to highlight. Because, why write about any of the theoretical stuff that like nobody picked up on?
Yeah.
And so like you're helping me, like I'm trying to have conversations. I don't know how many conversations I'm going to have, but this will all, and well, yeah, that's why it's a selfish show, right? To just try to suss out of people like, what did you learn from me about identity, and how did I impact your identity at all? And so I want to thank you for just taking the time to have this conversation with me. And let's have another one. Yeah. Because I have some other questions, but we can't make 3-hour podcasts. We're like,
valid.
Who's got the time? But if anyone wanted to get a hold of you for whatever reason, is there a way that they could do that?
Yeah. So right now I'm right in the in-between, but I will have a Psychology Today profile up and running soon.
Darci Leonard.
Yeah.
Check her out.
Search my name, and then I am looking to create like a more public social media presence.
Yeah.
So once that but for now, like email, they can always email me. It's just my name, DarciLeonard13, gmail.com. And once everything gets up and running, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. I love that you're doing this.
Let's do this again.
Okay. Yeah. For sure. Okay.